Satuaminen from Postnatal Body Fix and from In Shape Moms. What I'd like to talk to you about today are 5 incredibly common mistakes that women make in the postpartum period that really just halt their results in getting their pre-baby body back. So first of all, you probably just had a baby or you're about to, so congratulations. It's a really amazing time, but I also know you have probably very little time, so I'll try to go through this kind of quick, about 10 minutes of your time, okay? So the first mistake is not doing anything in those first 6 weeks. The doctors kind of freak us out when they say, you shouldn't do anything those first 6 weeks, don't do any exercise, etc. But they're so vague that a lot of women really do nothing except for take care of the baby, or others, they really don't know what to do. So the best thing to do is to start actually the very same day that you give birth, with some corrective and rehabilitative exercises for the core and for the pelvic floor. So your basic Kegel exercise, but a really light one, would be a good place to start. Those first 3 days you can do hyperpressive exercises if you're familiar with those. That helps with the uterine involution. But then after those 3 days you can't do them for the next 3 weeks, so until day 21. So if you know those exercises, do them first 3 days and then stay away from them for about 3 weeks. So it's a really big mistake to do nothing in those 6 weeks in terms of recovery, because we have a nice little window there right in the beginning to kind of get our nervous system and neuromuscular system back online. So if we do that right away, the recovery is much faster, much more effective, and the results are a lot better. And it doesn't take very much time. 5 minutes a day is plenty. What else? So basically your postpartum recovery comes down to doing the right exercises, the right time, and in the right sequence. So that'll get you your body back, no problem. All right, the second mistake. So it goes right with the first one. This happens so often. I have lots and lots of women on my Facebook page who put a nice comment saying, "Oh, I'm so excited. I got cleared from my 6-week checkup and I'm gonna go running today." So it's like, no, don't do that. That's the worst thing you can do. So this 6-week kind of stay at home type of phase really does not set us up for our previous activities. So after that checkup, you got to start. If you haven't already started in that first phase, you got to start your recovery. You got to start from the beginning and progress slowly up to impact exercises or your previous activities. And really this process takes some months. My clients, I don't let them go anywhere near any impact for a minimum of 4 months. Most of them take way longer, much longer, even up to a year. So it depends on what your fitness level was before you got pregnant, how your core and your pelvic floor were before pregnancy. Then it depends on what you did during pregnancy. If you had a lot of nausea, etc., that really destroys weakens your pelvic floor, for example. Depends on what kind of birth you had, if it was vaginal, C-section, if there were any instruments, and then it depends on what you've done after birth. But I don't know any women who in 6 weeks of doing nothing can actually go to their previous activities without having some kind of repercussions for their pelvic floor in the future. So what you really want to do is start with the involuntary function of the pelvic floor and core muscles. So this is the other problem. In that first checkup, or not necessarily the first one, that 6-week checkup or the 40-day checkup, what they usually do is do some testing on the pelvic floor function. So a vaginal exam where they might ask you to squeeze around the practitioner's fingers. So what this does, it tests the voluntary function of those muscles, the strength, which is great. We need some strength as well, but what's more important postpartum is the involuntary function, or the resting tone. So what's the pelvic floor doing when I'm not thinking about it? This is actually the function that keeps us continent and keeps our organs in place. So, and they don't normally test for that. A gynecologist does not tend to be trained in that type of testing. So really important to do this, and do first the involuntary and then the voluntary muscles, because listen to this fact: out of incontinent women, about half actually have good strength, so they do a good job of that squeezing test. But just about all of them, almost 100%, have really poor resting tone. So we need to get that resting tone up to avoid incontinence. So one thing you can do to see when you are ready for activity. So you definitely, it's really highly unlikely that 6 weeks postpartum you're ready for that activity. But once you've done rehab and some months have gone by, you can do a cough test. So you actually lay down on the floor, put your hands on your belly below the belly button, and you cough. And you see what happens to your hands. Do they go up? Do they go down toward the spine? Or do they not move? And then you do the same test with your eyes closed, paying attention to the pelvic floor. Do the muscles go up? Do they go out toward the vaginal entrance? Or do they not move? All right? And a properly functioning core, what happens when we cough or really do any other type of activity that increases intra-abdominal pressure, is a millisecond before this pressure increase, the pelvic floor and the abdominal wall muscles should react. And the abdominal wall should go slightly inwards and the pelvic floor should go up. So until the pelvic floor especially is rebounding when hit with some of this pressure, you really should not be doing much of any kind of fitness activity. Once your pelvic floor rebounds, but maybe the abdominal wall is not quite there yet, you can start doing some easy squats or rows, etc., but still no impact, not until those functions are properly rehabbed. So that is myth number 2, or mistake number 2. So the mistake was going right back to our previous activities after the 6-week check. Mistake number 3 is not visiting an osteopath or physical therapist to put our pelvis back together. So we've got a pelvis like so that this big baby goes through, and we often think of the pelvis as kind of one piece, but it's really 3 bones stuck together. So we've got our iliacs here on the sides that connect here at the pubis, and then we've got the sacrum and coccyx here in the back. So during the end of the last month, usually of pregnancy, normally it's the left side of the pelvis. It actually goes forward and rotates, and this is because the uterus rotates to the right, and the babies usually tend to put their backs on the left side. So the pelvis actually changes the structure, it becomes completely asymmetrical, but this is a good thing. But the thing is, after birth, it doesn't necessarily go back to the way it was. And in addition, when babies come out, when the babies are moving down into the pelvis, these bones here, they open out to let the baby in. Then as the baby goes through these different diameters inside the pelvis, in order for crowning and for birth to happen, these bones down here, the 6 bones, they open. And the coccyx moves out of the way. So everything really moves, centimeters. So this depends on how your birth was. It may not get anywhere near to their normal positions, especially if you gave birth on your back. Giving birth on your back is terrible because it doesn't allow for the proper movement. So be sure to visit an osteopath, a physical therapist, somebody who can help realign your pelvis. This is really important because then once you start recovery exercises, the pelvis gets more fixed as the muscles get stronger. It's also important that somebody takes a look at your pelvic floor. There's physical therapists that are specialized in this. It's especially important if you had any kind of a tear or an episiotomy, because that scar can keep the vagina from closing up, which usually happens in about 6 weeks postpartum. So do get somebody to check that out for you. 6 weeks, couple months down the road. Alright, mistake number 4 is not following postpartum diet. So often people get told, oh, postpartum or pregnancy is not a time to diet. Well, I completely disagree. I think it's exactly when you need to be on a really great high nutrition diet to assure happy, healthy baby growth, and then to get the rehab and the recovery done. Basically what we need low toxins. This is to have quality breast milk, but also to facilitate getting rid of the toxins that maybe you had during birth if you had anesthesia or any of the synthetic hormones. We also need high protein. This is to synthesize more collagen for the pelvic floor and repair muscle tissue. Then we need to be really well hydrated for breast milk production, and also to get rid of some of those toxins and get our bodies back into balance. We need some calories, quite a bit more calories for breastfeeding and for all those extra hours that we're awake. And then we need to be looking at a diet that's low in inflammation, because we have congestion in the pelvic area, so we really need to be avoiding products that might cause more inflammation. So, and obviously high nutritional density. So we want to avoid processed foods, cow's milk, sugar, alcohol, wheat, and coffee, and just load up on natural, wholesome foods. And don't really worry about quantity. Just eat when you're hungry, and worry about the quality. Make sure it's mostly organic. And then the last mistake number 5, is not using hypopressive exercises in your postpartum recovery. So these techniques are amazing. They are the key component of all my postpartum group work and postpartum personal training programs. They're amazing. These techniques stimulate the involuntary function of the pelvic floor. So that resting tone we talked about, that's so important. So to learn some more about these techniques, you can go to hypopressives.com, or you can go to any of my other websites or my online community, which is at perinatalfitness.ning.com, and there's some videos there. You can also find them at YouTube. I'm not going to show you here, it's kind of a complicated exercise to show you, so do go ahead and just check out those videos, and you can see what they are all about. But basically it's the main postpartum rehab technique used here in European countries, especially Spain, Belgium, France, and it works incredibly well. So that's it. Those are my 5 tips on the main mistakes women make in postpartum. So let's recap. First was starting too late, so not doing anything during those first 6 weeks postpartum. So you really got to use that window and do the right exercises, the right time, and the right sequence to really jumpstart your rehab. Number 2 was, after those 6 weeks, go to the checkup and say, woohoo, I'm going to start running again. No, don't do that. Hold your horses, do proper rehab, because it really has a high price skipping some of those steps. You may not notice it right away, but it's really evident if you get pregnant again, or often the symptoms come about 4 months afterwards when the pelvic floor just can't take anymore. So definitely use a proper sequence. Then number 3 was pelvis. Get your pelvis fixed up by an osteopath or physical therapist. Number 4 was definitely follow a fantastic high quality diet in postpartum recovery. And number 5 is get familiar with those hypopressive exercises. So be a big mistake not to use those exercises. Alright, so I hope that's been helpful. I tried to keep it nice and quick. I'm sure you got very little time. Would love to hear from you, so drop me a line at the community or an email at kaisa@fitnessintegral.com or kaisa@postnatalbodyfix.com. Thanks. Bye.